Right now, there is a voice in your head reading these words. You know it is your voice. But here is the strange part. You did not choose to hear it. It just started. Right now, as you are reading this, your inner voice is probably commenting on the fact that you are noticing your inner voice, which means it is commenting on itself, which is a strange loop that most people try not to think about for too long. When you are in a meeting and someone says something annoying, there is a voice that says what you cannot say out loud. When you lie in bed at 2 a.m. unable to sleep, there is a voice that will not let you rest. Most people assume this is just thinking, but the voice in your head is not just thinking. It is a specific cognitive system with its own name and its own neuroscience. The field studying inner speech is called introspective psychology, and for a long time, mainstream science avoided it because it was considered too subjective to study properly. It took the beeper study to make it measurable. And the first thing to understand is that it is not universal. Not everyone has it. In 2011, psychologist Russell Hurlburt at the University of Nevada ran a study using a technique called descriptive experience sampling. He found that approximately 30% of participants reported no inner speech at all, no running commentary, no internal narrator, just pure experience. The people with inner speech were baffled that anyone could exist without it. The people without it were baffled that anyone had been narrating their own life this whole time. Fun fact, when people who have no inner speech are asked to do math in their head, they report doing it visually, seeing numbers arranged in space, rotating them, moving them, a completely different cognitive experience of the same task. But here is what makes inner speech genuinely strange. When you think in words, the same machinery as speaking activates, partially. In 1947, psychologist Leslie Jacobson discovered that when people engage in inner speech, their laryngeal muscles, the muscles of the voice box, show measurable electrical activity. You are not imagining talking. You are almost talking. Your body is preparing to speak and then stopping itself at the last moment. This is why whispering to yourself when you are trying to concentrate is not childish. Your brain is just externalizing a process that normally runs internally. The partial speech is asking to become full speech. In 2002, neuroscientist Charles Fernyhough at Durham University proposed that inner speech comes in two fundamentally different forms. The first, condensed inner speech, fast, compressed, private shorthand, the internal version of texting. You get a fragment, a direction, the gist. The second, expanded inner speech, slower, more deliberate, more like an actual conversation you are having with yourself, hearing both sides. When you argue with yourself about whether to eat the second slice of cake, you are running a genuine internal dialogue between two distinct cognitive positions. Both of them are you. Neither of them is fully in charge. Some people report that their inner voice has a slightly different personality from their speaking voice, slightly more confident, slightly more honest, slightly more willing to say the thing they would never say out loud. Where does the voice come from? You assume it is your own voice, but research has shown the inner voice is not a simple replay of your speaking voice. In a 2019 study, researcher Johanna Badre at New York University found that the inner voice shifts and changes. When people imagined someone else speaking, the inner voice borrowed their qualities, tone, pace. The voice that feels most private, most purely personal, is partly built from other people. It is a composite, assembled from every voice you have ever heard and internalized. This means the voice telling you that you are not good enough at something was probably not originally your voice. It belonged to someone else, and you accidentally gave it a lifetime tenancy inside your own head. In 2004, psychologist Adam Winsler at George Mason University found that young children talk to themselves out loud constantly.
This is called private speech, and Winsler found that this external private speech gradually goes underground. It internalizes. It becomes inner speech, the voice that tells you to calm down, think before you act, check your work. That voice was once a spoken voice, probably your parents, your teachers.
Your inner speech is not just you talking to yourself. It is the people who raised you still talking, just from the inside. Fernyhough's research also found that people's inner speech often takes the form of condensed fragments that carry emotional weight without complete sentences. A single word can carry an entire argument. In 2013, psychologist Peter Langland-Hassan at the University of Cincinnati found that inner speech plays a direct role in cognitive control, the ability to plan, regulate behavior, and resist impulse. People who engage in more inner speech perform better on tasks that require holding information in mind and acting on it deliberately. The voice is not just commentary, it is infrastructure. It is how you manage yourself. The inner voice also rehearses conversations that will never happen. Arguments you win at 3 a.m. against someone who will never know you won. Replies you think of 3 days later. Perfect things you should have said. People who engage in more inner speech perform better on tasks that require holding information in mind and acting on it deliberately. The voice is not just commentary, it is infrastructure. It is how you manage yourself. But here is where it gets dark. For approximately 70% of people who experience psychosis, the symptoms include hearing voices. And research by Fernyhough and others has suggested something unsettling. The voices heard in psychosis may be misattributed inner speech. Hearing your own thoughts as if they came from outside. The boundary between inner voice and external voice is something the brain actively constructs. And in some conditions, it fails. Understanding that auditory hallucinations may be misattributed inner speech changes how we should think about people experiencing them. It is not a foreign invasion. It is their own mind, mislabeled. In 1997, psychologist Lev Vygotsky argued that inner speech is where social experience becomes private thought. And in some conditions, it fails. The conversations you have with other people do not just inform your views. They become the structure of your internal dialogue. You do not think alone. You think with the voices of everyone you have ever talked to. Understanding that auditory hallucinations may be misattributed inner speech changes how we should think about people experiencing them. It is not a foreign invasion. It is their own mind, mislabeled. Right now, the voice in your head is either narrating this sentence or it is already moving ahead, anticipating, reacting. It has been running almost continuously since you learned to speak, built from your parents, your teachers, everyone who shaped you. It is borrowed architecture, internalized voices, the accumulated conversation of a whole life running on loop, which might be why silence, real silence, the kind where the voice actually stops, feels so rare and so strange and so difficult to find. Some meditation traditions have spent thousands of years developing techniques specifically to quiet the inner voice. The fact that this is considered a major spiritual achievement tells you something about how constant and powerful it usually is. Subscribe, because next time we are going somewhere just as interesting. See you there!